Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed at Hitmix 88.9 WEIU.
Welcome to the Tales of Music and Film podcast. My name is DJ Apollo, and thank you for listening to this recording. As at the time that you are listening to this, I have taken about a week off from doing podcasts because I've really been busy with schoolwork, and I had to make a call last week not to do any recordings. But the good news is things are back on track. Things have finally slowed down, so I'm very excited to be doing this recording here today. My goal as of right now is to hit 60 recordings, and as we stand, this is going to be episode number 53, so we got about 4 weeks left before I graduate from Eastern Illinois University, and that gives me enough time. As long as I do 2 recordings a week from this point going forward, I will hit my goal of 60, so let's keep at it. So today, I'm going to be covering a brand new film that's currently out in theaters right now. And I noticed I've been starting to get into the habit of doing that recently because I think a lot of people should hear about how good the film is doing to help promote them a little bit. I've done that with the new Ant-Man film and the new Scream 6. So here we go again. This time we're talking about one of my favorite franchises of all time, John Wick. We're covering John Wick Chapter 4. And before we get into it, here is a quick little plot summary of the film. With the price on his head ever increasing, legendary hitman John Wick takes his fight against the high table globally as he seeks out the most powerful players in the underworld, from New York to Paris to Japan to Berlin. The movie was released on March 24, 2023, and is currently in theaters. The director is Chad Stahelski. The music was composed by Tyler Bates and Joel J. Richard. Cinematography was done by Dan Loudston. And of course, this is the 4th entry in the John Wick franchise, and this film is distributed by Lionsgate Films. So there's a quick little analysis for you on the plot, as well as some little facts about this film. And I'm telling you right now, man, this movie is going to blow you away. It is amazing. So before I go any further with John Wick Chapter 4, I want to go back in time a little bit to my history with these films. I was introduced to the John Wick franchise back in 2017, not long after John Wick Chapter 2 had come out on DVD. My best friend Jonathan, who has been on the show before, him and I covered Godzilla in 1954. That's a very excellent recording. Highly recommend you go check it out. But he was the one who introduced me to any of these films because he's heard a lot about them. So him and I watched the first 2 films together, and him and I were just amazed with how amazing these films were. It left a big imprint on us. Him and I both thought that these are like some of the greatest action films that we have ever seen. And with each entry, they keep finding ways to up the stakes. Just like every entry, just when you think things can't get any more crazy, the creators somehow find a way. And the original film is that so the whole story. So the first John Wick came out back in 2014, and it's just about Keanu Reeves' character John Wick, who is a retired hitman, who's like one of the most famous hitmen of all time. He's living his retired life. He got married, and his wife died. And where we are in the story, his wife passed away a couple of days ago, and in her will, she left him a puppy. And a day after he gets the puppy, some Russian gangsters break into his house and they steal John Wick's car. It's a very nice old car. It's like a Mustang or something. And they kill the dog that his wife gave him. And this, of course, sends him on a rampage on revenge of killing all the men involved in the breaking into of his house. And the whole film is just him going after those guys. And they are a part of the Russian mafia. So the whole 2-hour runtime was just Keanu Reeves' character John Wick just mowing down all these Russian mobsters with guns, doing all these fight moves and everything. And It's some of the greatest action that you will see. The key word here is how well it's choreographed. These fight scenes are just like unlike anything I've ever seen. Just the stunt work, the choreography, just the movements. It's so well like in sync, and I think these films should be shown in like film classes about how to do an action movie the right way. Like this film keeps things fresh from beginning to end. There isn't like a moment where things slow down. It's just a quick like 2 hour an adrenaline rush. And another thing I love about this film are the characters. For me, that is the best part about these films. Is just how amazing the characters are, how well written they are, how every actor they've picked to play these roles have all fit in perfectly. And I just like how each film builds up the John Wick universe, you know? Like the film kept things pretty small, and then 2 and 3 make the world even bigger. It just goes into more detail about it. It's such an interesting world. And you would have to watch these films for yourself to get a good genuine idea, but take it from me, these films also have some of the best world building I have ever seen. And there's just so much detail that goes into these films. To jump back on board to the story for a minute, so John Wick Chapter 1 ends with him getting all the guys involved in the killing of his puppy, and he actually breaks into a dog shelter to heal himself because he got injured pretty badly, and he finds a dog getting ready to be sent to be killed, and he rescues it and takes the dog home with him, and that's the end of the movie. And then Chapter 2 opens up with him fighting the main mobster's brother, who has a facility where all the stolen cars are taken to. He tracks it down, and he takes back his car that was stolen from him. Then he goes home, and he gets back into retirement, buries all of his guns, his suit, and everything again to go back to living a normal life. And then that's when this mobster knocks on his door, who you find out later on in the film, John made a deal with him. If he does this job, he can retire, but he has to stay retired. So John broke it. So now the guy wants to hire him for this job, and John says no. Then this mobster, takes a grenade launcher and blows up John Wick's house. So now John has to do whatever he says. He has to go on this mission that he assigns him. So that's part 2. And then part 2 ends with him breaking one of the most important rules in that world. And then part 3 is him on the run because now there's a bounty on his head for millions of dollars. Then number 3 ends with him partnering up with a friend to go against the High Table. And that's just a quick little summary on what happens in each film, but you would have to watch them for yourself to get a full context. But I think all 4 films do a good job of upping up the stakes and keeping the action new and introducing all kinds of new stuff. I will say, as of right now, after seeing all 4 films, that my least favorite would have to be part 2. And that's not a bad thing. All 4 of these films are breathtaking, but when they are compared, I think part 2 was the weakest entry. But again, not a bad thing. So now that's going to bring us into Chapter 4. And the first thing I want to get into is the cast for this film. So right off the bat, we have the legendary actor Keanu Reeves returning for the 4th time to play his iconic character, John Wick, or aka the Boogeyman. Then after that, we have Scott Adkins. Then we have the late, great Lance Reddick. Rest in peace. He recently just passed away at the age of 60. Then we have Donnie Yen. And then we have Bill Skarsgård. And up next on the cast list, we got Rina Soyama, Ian McShane, Hiroyuki Sanada, and lastly, we have Lawrence Fishburne, and that's really the main cast for this film. There's a lot of side characters in this, but out of those names, those are kind of like the main people that we see the most in the film's runtime. And man, I'm telling you, the cast in this film is the strongest one yet. Like, the film does an amazing job of, like, introducing these amazing characters. Like, I'm gonna put it like this, okay? Every character that gets introduced in this franchise could all look like they could all have their own solo film, and I would go watch it. Everybody, no matter how much screen time they get, have some of the best character writing. It's the way they act, the way they fight. Just like you want to learn more about these people. Like, this franchise is open, like dozens of sequels or spin-offs can be made, and I would watch them 100%. Every character that gets introduced, you want to learn more about them. And of the cast list, Lance Reddick and Ian McShane are returning characters. They make appearances in all 4 films. The late great Lance Reddick, he plays a character by the name of Sharon, who is the guy who works at the front desk. Whenever you come in and check in into the hotel, he's the first person you meet. You slide one of your gold coins to him, then he gives you a room key, and he asks you some questions about where would you like your guns and stuff to be stored. Because in this universe, every giant city in the world has a giant hotel where all the assassins can go and spend the night and meet people and figure out their jobs and everything. It's like this hidden career that the outside world knows nothing about, or it's hidden very well. And Sharon is an amazing character. He doesn't get much screen time. Like, part 3 is the one where he gets the most screen time. You actually get to see him use some guns and help defend the hotel. That was a bright highlight for part 3. But with little screen time that Lance Reddick had, man, he stole the screen every time. He was an amazing actor. He brought Sharon to life so well, and there was just something about him. The way he talked, the way he acted, man, just Lance did such an amazing job bringing this character to life, and I'm still sad about his death. And part 4 was amazing. With a little screen time he had, man, like, he gave it everything he had. He was an amazing actor, and the world is going to miss him dearly. And my condolences go out to his family. And Ian McShane is another amazing addition to these films. He's an amazing actor, and he plays the owner of the New York hotel. His character's name is Winston. And Winston, he doesn't kill anybody throughout the entire film, man, but he has this presence of, like, this is someone you do not want to screw around with. Like, he means business. Like, you always take him seriously. And I love the friendship that him and John Wick have. Same with Sharon. These three men know each other very well, and they have an amazing friendship between them. Like, they're like the main trio of this story, and they bounce off each other perfectly. I love the interactions between them. And Lawrence Fishburne, his character shows up in part 2. He plays the Bowery King. It's its own little group that he has. It's this giant underground group who like their hideouts are underneath the sewer system of the city. And I think it was really cool that he's in this franchise with John Wick, because Lawrence Fishburne, as you know, and Keanu Reeves played Neo and Morpheus in the Matrix film. So I thought that was pretty cool that now they're working together again in this series. I really had my fingers crossed that they could cast Carrie-Anne Moss, who played Trinity. I was really hoping that they would get her in one of these sequels as an assassin, because that would have been so funny. Because it could have been like, this is like some alternate Matrix universe. Like, that would have been very funny. But anyway, it didn't happen, but no big deal. But yeah, as far as returning characters go, they are the returns. So, you know, we have John Wick, Winston, and Sharon returning. Other than that, and Lawrence Fishburne's character. But other than that, we have all kinds of amazing new characters in this. And I want to give a shout out to Bill Skarsgård. And I've only seen him in a couple of other things. He played the clown in the brand new It films that came out back in 2017 and 2019. Both really good. He played the clown in both versions. Like, man, he was amazing. You want to talk about terrifying, man? Just go back and watch those films. Like, dude, he was menacing. They could not have found a better guy to play that character, man. He had it down. He was terrifying in both films. And he was amazing in this. He also played a character in the film The Devil of All Time, which is a Netflix original film, stars Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson. Very good film. Highly recommended. But heads up, that film is dark as heck. there are no good moments in that film. It's straight depression from beginning to end. It's a really dark and sad story. So just FYI, man, it's not for the faint of heart. It's sad and very kind of miserable. But anyway, Bill did such an amazing job in this one. He plays a member of the High Table who is put in charge of taking out John Wick, and man, he had a big presence in this one. And I like how his character is kind of like one of those things where just like he thinks that he holds like all the power, right? That he cannot be touched in any way, shape, or form. Like he's so like full of himself. He thinks that he is like the greatest High Table member of all time. Like he wears all this fancy clothing, acts like he's so tough, but like, you know, this guy could not have a bigger ego if he tried. He's just like, he's really, really full of himself. And you get the sense of that right away in this film. And he is very menacing, though. Even though above all that, underneath, you do not want to mess around with him. There are several scenes in this where, like, the walls break and we see the real him. This guy is kind of a psycho, and he will do whatever he has to do to get the job done. And he has a good way of just like bending you to get you to do his will. And he had a menacing presence in this one. So yeah, Bill, man, good job in this one, man. Knocked it out of the ballpark. And of course, Keanu Reeves playing John Wick. Like, what else can I say at this point? Keanu Reeves is an amazing actor. And I actually did a paper about the John Wick films back when I was going to school at Lakeland. I did a paper talking about how, like, I think these films really revived his career. He got really popular in, like, the late 80s and early to mid 90s, and even the late 90s. Like, he got pretty popular. Like, his first, like, big claim to fame was, you know, of course, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure back in 1989. And then, after that, he would go on to do, you know, Bill and Ted 2, and then he would go on to do, you know, films like Speed, Point Break, the first Matrix film, and then he would go on to do films like Constantine. Now, and here's another one that I'm a huge fan of. This is the film he did in '97 with Al Pacino. It's called The Devil's Advocate, which came out in '97. You have to check this film out. Me and my best friend Jonathan, him and I both think this film might be one of Keanu Reeves' best performances. To anyone out there who thinks that Keanu Reeves is not a good actor, go back and watch that film and then come talk to me. He was incredible in that. And then in 2003 he would go on to do The Matrix Reloaded, then The Matrix Revelations. And he also did a film in 91 with his best friend, River Phoenix. It was called My Own Private Idaho. And those are like his big films that he's done. He's done a lot of films that were like B-movie stuff that went under the radar. That's why a lot of people, including me, think that the John Wick films really helped revive his career. Because before these films came out, he kind of like disappeared for a little bit. In 2006, like, he did another film with Sandra Bullock, and it was called The Lake House. And I never heard of it. I think it was like another one of those B films like that went under the radar. I don't think much people know about it, but Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves starred in Speed together, and they have amazing chemistry on screen. I think the Speed film is another like huge milestone for Keanu Reeves' career. It's a very good action film. I recommend you go check it out. I need to go rewatch it again. It's been a while. But yeah, the John Wick films are going down as some of his greatest films because he brings so much to this character. Like, he does a majority of his own stunts. He trains for like 6 months on karate and jiu-jitsu and all these other fighting strategies. And like, the guy even earned himself an honorary black belt just because of how dedicated he was to learning all the fight moves. Now, keep in mind, he was learning all this, including gun fu. Like, he was learning, like, if you want to see how good he is at fighting and using guns, you can look up his training videos on YouTube. Like, dude, this guy took this role so seriously. He went through all this training to bring this character to life. And keep in mind, this guy was in his 50s in all 4 installments. Like, as of today, Keanu Reeves is 58 years old. And man, he really pushed himself in all these films. Like, he does all the a good majority of the action himself. I believe he stated that anything that involved like cars, like there are a few scenes where John Wick gets hit by cars. Those are ones he did not do. But other than that, he did a good majority of all the stunts himself, and he's such an amazing actor too. But most importantly, he's a beautiful human being. If you read any stories about him, this guy could literally win the award for like the nicest man in Hollywood, because like, just to give you an idea, back when he was filming one of the Matrix films back in the early 2000s, he actually thought that the special effects team wasn't getting paid enough, so he actually gave a good chunk of his paycheck to the crew members for the special effects. And another example is that they couldn't hire Al Pacino for Devil's Advocate because his demand on what his pay should be. So Keanu Reeves actually gave some of his pay to Al Pacino so that he would come on board to this project. And the other thing I like about him is that he didn't let Hollywood get to his head. Like, you see him, like, you know, in photos, like, he rides the subway, he dresses in, like, normal clothing, you know, and he doesn't take himself seriously, you know, he's just an actor. And I wish more actors would take notes from him, you know, he's such a sweet guy. And I want to say, you know, dude, he's had a really hard life. I even mentioned this in the paper that I typed out about him. Like, his dad left him when he was a kid, never got to know him. His best friend, River Phoenix, passed away from a drug overdose in the early 90s. Keanu Reeves dated a girl in the late 90s. Her name was Jennifer Syme, and they had a daughter who died of stillbirth on Christmas Eve. Her name was Ava. And because of this, Keanu and her separated for a couple of years, but then they reunited a couple of years later in 2001, but then Jennifer was killed in a car accident. And I just like, dude, I felt so bad for Keanu on that. I can't imagine, you know, just like how horrible those experiences were, you know, just like, dude, that is just horrible. And man, my condolences go out to him, man. Like, that is just terrible. But yeah, the guy has had a really hard life, and he's lost so many people that he's cared about, but he didn't let it stop him, you know, and he kept, you know, moving forward. And his career has made a very massive comeback thanks to the massive success of the John Wick films. Like, he's in a lot of stuff now. Back in 2019, he voiced the character in Toy Story 4, and it looks like he's in talks to reprise his role of John Constantine again for Constantine 2. And those are just kind of like rumors going around right now, but he said in an interview that he would love to play that character again. So like, he's in a really good place now, and he has a new girlfriend. Her name is Alexandria Grant, and dude, I'm so happy that he has a new girlfriend again. Like, dude, he looks so happy now, and I wish him all the best. You know, like, I just want this man to be happy, and he looks so happy. Dude, I am so happy for him. Ever since I found out, man, just I wish him the best life possible. He's such an amazing dude, seriously. And to go back to the John Wick films for a minute, let's see here. Donnie Yen. Oh, man, we have to give this guy a shout out, man. He was amazing in this. His character's name is Kane, and he is a blind hitman. And, like, dude, this guy is like Daredevil on freaking steroids. Like, dude, this guy, every fight scene that he was in this, just, dude, it was just, I can't say into words. It was just so good, man. His character was just amazing in this. He was one of the best introductions in this film, man. He was amazing. I think Matthew Murdock wishes he could fight as well as Kane does. Like, man, he was incredible. I want a spin-off with this character as fast as possible. I don't care if it goes straight to streaming. I'm watching it. And lastly, one last character to give a shout out on. Rina Sawayama. She was not in the movie for very long. She was in it for the first, like, 15, 20 minutes. But, man, she was breathtaking in this as well. Like her fighting techniques, like dude, she was a nice addition to this film. And there's actually a post-credit scene after the credits are done rolling that indicates she might be coming back in her own possible spinoff. Like we don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. I hope it's true. I hope she does get a spinoff. I'd go watch it. Her character was amazing. The character she plays in this is Akira. So fingers crossed she gets her own spinoff, because I'm telling you right now, man, I will go watch that. But that's all the characters I'm going to give a shout out on. But trust me, there are many more people in this film who deserve a shout out. Everybody involved in the making of this film, whether it was in front or behind the camera, all brought their A game. Now, the first thing I want to bring up, so I want to go through a list of points here on this film. The first point that I want to talk about is that the story, I'm saying this right now, the franchise is not known for having a lot of story elements. You know, everybody's here to see the breathtaking action sequences, because they are pure art at its finest. The way they're choreographed, the weapons you use, like they all are amazing in their own way. That's what people are here to see. But you do have to have moments that break out the fight sequences and introduce a lot of story elements, and all 4 films do this. But up until John Wick Chapter 4, John Wick 1 was the one who had the most story elements. But this one, I think, it beats the previous 3 films. I think this one had the most story elements than the other films. I think 100% that in John Wick Chapter 4, we learn more about John as a character than we do in the previous films. We get an idea of who he is, but this one, we get to have a much deeper look into how he sees things, and it's great. And this movie had a very important message of like, who do you want to be remembered as when you die? Like, how would you like to be remembered? If you're on your deathbed right now, how would you feel about your life looking back on it? Did you live a good life? Are you proud with the outcome? These are like big questions to be asking yourself. And the film really helps you think about that. It's like, how would you want to be remembered? How do you want to live your life? Like, how did you live it? Are you impressed with it or not? You know, these are big questions I don't think a lot of people think about. And I can definitely say, with that message alone, this film had the strongest story. And the next thing, here we go. We're going to open another can of worms on this, the action sequences. Now, I got to be honest. Going into this film, I was kind of worried that there was going to be no way they were going to be able to up the action, because by the time 3 wrapped up, I kind of figured that I'm like, okay, surely they've done everything they can really do at this point. I really don't see how they're going to be able to, to up the action in John Wick's 2 and 3, because those films introduced all these new techniques on fighting that I didn't even think were possible. So I'm just like, surely they've got to be out of ideas by now. Nope, this film proved me dead wrong on everything. One of my favorite sequences in this action-wise is that the camera pans up from above, and we watch John as he enters each room in this building, and he has this gun that fires incendiary rounds, which are like these flame bullets, so when they hit you catch on fire. And dude, the whole sequence, the camera work, the framing, the color, the way it was shot, like the way it's choreographed and everything, it kind of felt like you were playing a video game a little bit. It was amazing. And another scene in this that I really loved was this action sequence where John's driving a car. I feel like it's a rule now with each John Wick film that we have to have a car sequence in there somewhere, or some kind of chase sequence. And each film we get that. Like John Wick Chapter 3, there's literally a scene of him riding a horse through the streets of New York. It's just like, dude, just when you think there's no way they have any other creative ideas, right? They just keep coming up with these new things you never would have thought about, But the car sequence in this was really, really good. And like always, the way it's shot, amazing. You would just have to see it for yourself to get where I'm coming from. But yeah, if you're a film lover like me who loves studying film, you will not be disappointed in this. And one last scene that I liked about this film was the ending. Oh boy. So I want to skip ahead here for a minute, and I want to jump into the ending of this film because it leaves a lot to be talked about. Now, right out the bat, I was very shocked with the ending to John Wick Chapter 4. And before we get into it, I just want to give a brief mention that there was actually plans that they were going to film John Wick's 4 and 5 back to back, and then due to COVID happening, I guess that idea was kind of dropped. And with the ending of Chapter 4, I don't know if we need a Part 5 to tell you the truth. So John Wick Chapter 5 ends with John having a duel with Bill Skarsgård's character. Apparently in the old ways of the High Table, in order to settle the differences between people, they would have an old school duel at a location at sunrise. And so Keanu meets up with him. They agree on the terms on how this will be done. They meet at a location and they have their duel. And John becomes victorious, but Bill Skarsgård managed to get a good couple of shots in on John Wick. And he's sitting there bleeding out. And he tells Winston to take him home. And then Keanu slowly walks down a staircase, and he just keels over, and the last thing he thinks about is his dead wife. And then it cuts to Winston and Lawrence Fishburne's character. They're him and Winston are staring at John Wick's grave next to his wife, and both graves don't have years on them for when they were born and when they died, but people wonder, I get the film doesn't like 100% confirm that John is dead because Lawrence's character looks at Winston and he's like, "Where do you think he is?" And then Winston gives him a remark, and then Lawrence laughs, and he just walks away. And I don't know, it's kind of like hinted that John may have faked his death. Like, we don't know. But as of right now, John Wick is dead and the franchise is over. And to tell you the truth, I want this to be the ending. I don't think we need a John Wick 5. Because, like, what else are they going to do with this character at this point? This film, in my opinion, wrapped up everything. I really don't see what else they could do at this point. And the last thing I want is for them to drag this franchise out to the point where, oh, can we end this now? Like, prime example, the Fast and Furious films. That series is going to have 12 entries at this point. The franchise has been going on since 2001. The original film starts out with them street racing, and I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. Fast and Furious 9, they fly a car into space. They make a car into a battleship in space. I'm just like, how did we get here? Why is this franchise still going on? It should have ended a long time ago. It should have ended after 7, in my opinion. I do not want the John Wick films to reach that point. I think Chapter 4 did an amazing job wrapping the story up. You know, at least wrapping up John's story arc. And I thought it was perfect. I was very shocked because I went into this thinking that you were going to get a 5th installment. But after thinking about it, I loved the ending. I don't think we need a number 5. And I was very pleased. Like, I left the theater feeling very fulfilled. Me and my best friend Jonathan, along with our friend Benny and Jonathan's dad, Randy, the 4 of us went to go see this film. And then what's funny is we got in the theater right as the film started because Benny hadn't seen the other John Wick films, so literally like that day before we went to the theater, Jonathan was trying to show him all the movies before we went to the theater because he wanted Benny to understand what was going on, and we were running 5 minutes late. But the minute we got in the theater, got our popcorn and drinks and everything, we were walking in right as the credits started rolling, so we got in there perfectly. And of course, Jonathan jokes saying that, "See, told you I planned this whole thing out." I'm like, "Yeah, Jonathan, sure you did." It was funny, but we had a really good time. The 4 of us went to go see John Wick Chapter 3 in theaters as well, and we had a really good time watching this. It was another amazing theater experience that I will hold very dear, and I loved how this film ended, the story, and I don't think that we need a 5th installment again, but we are getting a spinoff. It's going to be called ballerina, and it's going to star Anna de Armas playing the main character. I even saw that Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl on The Walking Dead, is going to be appearing in the show as well. There was this very cool behind-the-scenes photo with Norman Reedus and Anna de Armas on set. So I'm very excited to see it. I wonder what they're going to do with this first spinoff. I think Anna de Armas is an amazing actress. She recently just did a film called Blonde, which is about the story of Marilyn Monroe. And she's an amazing actress. I highly recommend you check out the film Knives Out, which I have covered on the podcast with my buddies Aiden and Preston. You can find that. We had a lot of fun on that recording, but she's an amazing actress. My favorite film with her right now is actually Blade Runner 2049. She was amazing in that. So I'm very excited to see what they're going to do with this first spinoff. It's going to be an American action thriller. It's going to be directed by Len Wiseman, and it's going to be set between the events of John Wick 3 and Chapter 4. So I'm very excited to see what they're going to do, and I want them to do this. I think it's a good idea to wrap up John's story and then let all these spin-offs take over, because there's so many characters that I want to see have their own stories be shown. Like I said, this franchise does an amazing job of introducing all these characters that you just want to see have their own films. So very excited for this spinoff. But overall, those are going to be my thoughts on John Wick Chapter 4, and I say this with 100% pure honesty. If you have not seen these films, I highly recommend you watch them. These 4 films are going to be going down as, I think, as some of the best action films ever put to screen. There's not enough talk that I can say that will do these films justice. The action and cinematography in these films are some of the greatest I've ever seen. The sets that they build, just the atmosphere in these stories is so amazing. I could talk about them for like a solid hour, but if you have not seen these films, they are breathtaking. And I will say this, that they are a real good feel-good films. These are some of the best action films I think you could ever see, and they're really good feel-good. These are the kind of films I highly recommend that you get a group of friends together and just lay back and watch them and just have an absolute blast. I love these films, and I'm going to buy John Wick Chapter 4 on Blu-ray as soon as it does. I own the other 3 films, and I like having little binge watches on all of them. One last big thing I want to talk about regarding John Wick Chapter 4 is that, so the current version that's playing in theaters right now has a runtime of 169 minutes. It's just been released that the original film, the original cut, had a runtime of 225 minutes, which I think it said that's around almost 3 hours long. And the reason why the film was so long was because it was kind of like going back to what I was saying earlier. This film was trying to set up all these brand new characters that were going to be getting their own spin-offs and everything. Like, this film spent a lot more time introducing all the characters, really taking their time on building them up, giving them backstory and everything so that the audience can get to know them. And the film took a lot of time of building out the world a lot as well. And that was the reasoning why the film was going to be so long, but they had to cut a lot of stuff. And to tell you the truth, I'm really sad that they had to do that, because as far as my opinion goes, director's cuts are always way superior than the original theater cut. Like, all 3 of the Lord of the Rings films, from what I've heard, all the extended cuts were way better. And one of my favorite movies of all time, Aliens, the director's cut for that, which is almost 3 hours, that version is way better in every way, shape, and form. So I have my fingers crossed that they release the director's cut on DVD, because I want to see the full version that they had planned. I know they had to cut down the run times, it's in theaters, they have to do that, but I really want to see the full vision that they had planned. So I just think that was pretty crazy, because if they had went through with this and kept it at the original runtime, that would have been the longest film in the franchise. But I hope they release it on DVD. I would love to see that. But that is going to wrap it up for my review of John Wick Chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed this recording. I'm so happy that I was finally given a chance to review this film. I had so much fun doing this, and I want to give a quick shout out to all the filmmakers and the entire cast and crew who were involved in the making of this film. You all did an amazing job. I love the John Wick franchise. These films are amazing. I think they're going to go down as some of the greatest action films ever made. Now, before I go, I want to make a quick announcement that I am going to be doing another recording after this. I am going to be covering the film Urban Legend that me and my mom just watched together recently, so be looking forward to that. That's going to be in our slasher film I cannot wait to get into. So until next time, my name is DJ Apollo, and you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.